Every company has secrets. Most of them are numbers. This one was a letter. Maya Bennett had worked as executive assistant to Julian Cross for exactly 14 months. 14 months of 6 a.m. emails. 14 months of silence in elevators. 14 months of never once seeing the man behind the desk look human. Julian Cross was the kind of billionaire people wrote articles about and never actually understood. 41 years old. Founder of Crossline Capital a firm that didn't just invest in companies. It rebuilt them from the inside out. He was ruthless in meetings. Generous in ways no one could explain. And completely, deliberately, unknowable. That Thursday night, Maya wasn't supposed to be in his private office at all. She was only there to grab a signed contract he'd forgotten before his flight to Geneva. But the drawer she pulled the one behind his desk, the one that was always locked wasn't locked that night. For the first time in 14 months, it slid open. And inside, beneath a stack of expired passports and an old company badge with a name she didn't recognize, was a small brass safe. Unlocked. Sitting slightly open, as if someone had opened it in a hurry and never come back to close it properly. Maya knew she shouldn't look. She looked anyway. Inside, there was no money. No documents. No jewelry. Just one folded piece of paper. Yellowed at the edges. Handwriting on the front that wasn't Julian's. 3 words, underlined twice. Don't come back. Maya's hand was already shaking before she even opened it. She had no idea that single letter was about to explain every strange, cold, unreadable thing about the most powerful man she had ever worked for. She had no idea it would also cost her the job she loved. To understand why a folded letter could shake a billionaire's entire empire, you first have to understand who Julian Cross really was not the version on magazine covers, but the version his own employees whispered about. He never celebrated wins. He never panicked over losses. He fired people without raising his voice, and somehow that was worse than shouting. There was exactly one rule at Crossline Capital that every employee learned within their first week. Never ask Julian Cross about his past. Not his family. Not his childhood. Not where the scar above his left eyebrow came from. New hires who tried usually got the same answer: a long pause, and then, "We're not here to talk about me." Maya had learned to read him the way sailors read weather. The tightening of his jaw before a hard decision. The way he always stood by the window, never sat, when a call went badly. The way his office fell completely silent every year on the same date in October: no meetings, no calls, door locked, lights dimmed: and no one, not even the board, was allowed to interrupt. She used to think it was superstition. A ritual for luck, maybe. Now, holding a letter that had clearly been read 1,000 times and folded back just as carefully every single time, she understood. October wasn't a ritual. It was a grief he never let anyone see. And the woman who wrote those 3 words: don't come back: was the reason. Maya didn't know her name yet. But she was about to find out that this stranger from Julian's past was not a stranger to Crossline Capital at all. She was standing in the building right now. 3 weeks earlier, Human Resources had onboarded a new senior analyst into the restructuring division. Her name was Elena Rhodes. 39 years old. Recruited quietly, off-cycle, through a private referral that bypassed the normal hiring committee entirely: a referral that, buried in the system, had come from Julian's own executive account. Nobody questioned it. Founders pulled strings for talent all the time. But Maya remembered something odd from that week: the only time she'd ever seen Julian visibly rattled in an open office. He had walked past the restructuring floor, stopped mid-step at the sight of a woman by the coffee station, and turned around before she saw him. Maya had assumed it was nothing. A scheduling conflict, maybe. Now, staring at the letter in her hands, she pulled up the new hires file with trembling fingers. Elena Rhodes. Hometown, Millbrook, Ohio. Same hometown listed on an old employee badge Maya had just found in that drawer: a badge belonging to a 23-year-old Julian Cross, back when Crossline Capital didn't exist yet, back when he was nobody. Maya's stomach turned. Julian hadn't hired a stranger by accident. He had hired the one person he swore he'd never see again. On purpose. And the timing a 3 weeks before his birthday, 3 weeks before the 1 week in October when his office went completely dark wasn't a coincidence either. Something had changed his mind after 20 years. And Maya was starting to suspect it wasn't kindness. It was unfinished business. Before the towers of glass. Before the billion-dollar portfolio. Before Julian Cross meant anything at all. There was just Julian 19 years old, working double shifts at his uncle's auto shop in Millbrook, Ohio, sleeping 4 hours a night, saving every spare dollar in a coffee can under his bed. And there was Elena. Smart. Sharp-tongued. The only daughter of the town's most respected family the Rhodes, who owned half of Millbrook's Main Street and had opinions about who their daughter was allowed to love. Julian and Elena had grown up 2 streets apart and had somehow never spoken until the summer he fixed her father's truck for free, just to have an excuse to see her again. They fell for each other the way only teenagers can completely, recklessly, certain it would last forever. For 18 months, it did. Then Julian asked her to marry him. Not with a ring he couldn't afford one yet but with a plan. He would move them both to the city. He'd work construction by day, take business classes by night. It would be hard, but it would be theirs. Elena said no. Not gently. Her exact words, the ones Julian would carry for the next 20 years without ever repeating them to a single living soul, were simple and final. You'll never be enough for the life I want. Don't come back until you're someone. She left for college 3 weeks later. Julian never saw her again. Until 3 weeks ago, when he opened a resume with her name on it, and instead of tearing it up like every rational instinct told him to, he picked up the phone and made one call. Hire her. Here is the part almost nobody at Crossline Capital ever understood about their founder's relentless, almost frightening drive. It wasn't ambition. It was a sentence. You'll never be enough. Julian built his first company at 23 and lost it in 11 months. He built his second at 26 and sold it for enough to finally stop working construction. By 32, he had founded Crossline Capital and by 35, it was worth more than the entire town of Millbrook combined. Every acquisition. Every sleepless night. Every empire he built brick by brick wasn't really about money at all. It was about answering one woman's rejection with a decade of undeniable proof. But here's the twist almost nobody saw coming including Julian himself. Somewhere between his second company and his fifth, the anger quietly disappeared. What replaced it wasn't pride. It was longing. He never dated seriously. He never let anyone close enough to ask why. Colleagues assumed he simply preferred being alone. The truth was smaller, and sadder, and far more human than anyone at Crossline Capital would have guessed. He kept the letter not because he hated her. He kept it because some nights, it was the only proof he had that she was ever real at all. And when her resume landed on his desk 20 years later not as a plea for reconciliation, but as a woman rebuilding her own life after a difficult divorce, needing a job, having no idea whose company she was applying to Julian didn't see an enemy. He saw the one chance he never thought he'd get. The chance to finally stand in front of her. Not as the boy she rejected. As the man she'd once said he'd never become. Maya knew she should put the letter back exactly where she found it and forget she ever saw it. Instead, she made the worst decision of her career. She waited by Elena Rhodes's desk after hours, and she asked one question she had no right to ask. Did you know Julian Cross growing up? Elena's face went pale in a way that told Maya everything before a single word was spoken. What followed wasn't the confrontation Maya expected. Elena didn't get angry. She didn't deny it. She sat down slowly, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she looked less like a confident new hire and more like a woman who had been quietly unraveling since her first day. I didn't apply here because of him, Elena said. I didn't even know Crossline was his company until my second interview. By then, I needed the job too badly to walk away. Then why hasn't he said anything to you? Maya asked. Elena's answer was the one that finally broke something open in Maya's chest. Because I think he's still waiting to see if I'll say I was wrong first. 20 years, and neither of them had moved first. 20 years, and both of them were still standing in the same doorway, waiting for the other person to prove something that no longer needed proving. Maya realized, holding that folded letter in her bag like a stolen secret, that she hadn't just uncovered Julian Cross's past. She had accidentally placed herself directly between two people who were about to either finally heal a euro, or destroy the fragile professional distance keeping both of them from falling apart completely. And in exactly 4 days, Julian was scheduled to walk back into that office for his one dark week of October. The week no one was allowed to interrupt. This year, for the first time in 20 years, Elena Rhodes had a badge that let her into that floor. October arrived the way it always did, a euro, the calendar cleared, the door locked, the lights dimmed to almost nothing. Except this year, Julian wasn't alone. Maya, terrified of what she'd started, made the decision to tell Elena the truth about the letter a euro, the safe, the badge, 20 years of a single date marked in silence. She expected Elena to walk away. Instead, at 9:47 p.m., security cameras on the executive floor recorded something that had never happened once in company history. Elena Rhodes knocked on Julian Cross's locked office door. There was a long pause, a euro, the kind that, on the recording, feels like it lasts an hour. Then the door opened. No one knows exactly what was said in that room over the next 40 minutes. Maya, waiting outside against every instinct telling her to leave, only heard fragments through the door. A long silence. Then Julian's voice, quieter than anyone at Crossline Capital had ever heard it. I kept it because I never wanted to forget why I started. Then Elena's voice, breaking on the words. I didn't write that to punish you. I wrote it because I was scared you'd give up everything for a girl who didn't know what she wanted yet. I built all of this to prove you wrong. You didn't need to prove anything. You just needed to come back and tell me I was wrong to ever let you go. The door stayed closed for a long time after that. When it finally opened, neither of them explained anything to anyone. They didn't have to. Chapter 8 a euro, what the letter really meant. 6 months later, Crossline Capital looked exactly the same from the outside. Same glass tower. Same relentless deal flow. Same reputation for a founder who never let anyone close. Except now, once a year in October, the office still goes quiet for 1 week. Not out of grief anymore. Out of habit, a euro, a private tradition neither Julian nor Elena has ever felt the need to explain to the rest of the company. Maya kept her job, in the end. Julian never mentioned the safe again, and she never brought it up either, a euro, some doors, once opened, are better left respectfully closed. But she thinks about that letter often. 3 words that could have destroyed a man. Don't come back. Instead, they built one. Because sometimes the people who reject us aren't wrong about who we are in that moment. They're only wrong about who we're capable of becoming. And sometimes, the cruelest sentence anyone ever says to us isn't meant to end the story at all. It's the first line of the one we haven't written yet. 6 months later, Crossline Capital looked exactly the same from the outside. Same glass tower. Same relentless deal flow. Same reputation for a founder who never let anyone close. Except now, once a year in October, the office still goes quiet for 1 week. Not out of grief anymore. Out of habit, a euro, a private tradition neither Julian nor Elena has ever felt the need to explain to the rest of the company. Maya kept her job, in the end. Julian never mentioned the safe again, and she never brought it up either, a euro, some doors, once opened, are better left respectfully closed. But she thinks about that letter often. 3 words that could have destroyed a man. Don't come back. Instead, they built one. Because sometimes the people who reject us aren't wrong about who we are in that moment. They're only wrong about who we're capable of becoming. And sometimes, the cruelest sentence anyone ever says to us isn't meant to end the story at all. It's the first line of the one we haven't written yet.